earlier last month, Tesla was hit by a couple of lawsuits, or pieces of legislation, I should say, in North Carolina and Texas that would have made it basically impossible for them to function in those states. And it was grim times for Tesla because other states were watching this and could possibly try other pieces of legislation similar in their own states. But now, at least in North Carolina, and we're seeing glimmers of this in states like New York, things are looking a lot better for them. So the bill that was going to take place in North Carolina, which at the time had passed in the Senate, did not receive as good of a welcome in the House, and it's currently being scuttled. And for possibly an interesting reason, actually. So Tom Tills, as the Speaker of the House, right before they were going to vote on this, he got a test drive in a Tesla Model S. Sort of weird timing there. And he's not in favor of the legislation anymore. Tesla's Director of Public Policy, James Chen, was asked whether or not he thinks that this test drive had an effect, and he was like, I'm sure it did. Now, they didn't give him a Tesla. It wasn't like a bribe or anything like that, but maybe the simple act of driving an all-electric car that's extremely luxurious on the inside and can do 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds while also going over 280 miles on one electric charge, maybe that's enough to sway his mind. But at least in North Carolina, which had seemed like ground zero for these sorts of laws, it's not going to happen. We'll have to see next year if they take it up. A couple of senators are quoted here as saying they're not going to go back to it, but you never know. There was also a bill in New York State that would have made it impossible for Tesla to register any retail locations. That also is not going to happen now. It could be pushed back until next year, although again, some senators are saying they're unlikely to take it up. We don't know in New York if test drives had anything to do with it, but that's a possibility. And also, on a separate note, I recently saw that New Hampshire specifically had legislation saying Tesla could open stores in their state. Since this is a U.S. automaker, since it is doing extremely well, having repaid its loan to the U.S. government 9 years earlier than expected, turning a profit, and also developing powertrains and batteries for other companies, including Toyota and Mercedes-Benz, it seems like you would not want to ban this company from operating your state and possibly in the future opening up factories in your state. That seems like wise business sense to me, although I'm not receiving checks from third-party dealer lobbyists, so I guess I don't have the financial incentive to act in a way that Texas at least currently is. And so I find this to be great news as a potential future EV buyer, as someone who wants American auto manufacturers to be the best in the world, and someone who, despite my liberal roots, believes pretty firmly in the free market. I want to see companies like this able to engage in business in all states. And I especially like that you knock these down early, you take it out in North Carolina, you take it out in New York, and maybe it'll stop other states from doing it. And honestly, on a personal note, anything that makes the third-party car dealers angry, I'm a big fan of because they seem like a bunch of tools.